The diplomatic station floated quietly in space, a small metal island between the stars. Ambassador Lisa Monroe walked through its curved hallways, her boots making soft sounds on the polished floor. She had been living here for 3 months, now working on trade deals with the Zilani people. The Zilani were good friends to humanity, perhaps the best friends humans had found among the stars. Lisa stopped at the large window in her office and looked out at the darkness. Tiny lights from distant stars twinkled like diamonds on black cloth. Somewhere out there was Earth, her home world. But this place felt like home too now. The Zilani had made her feel welcome from the very first day. The door to her office made a soft beeping sound. Lisa turned around as it slid open. Elder Nympha walked in, moving with the graceful steps that all Zilani had. The alien looked like a tall, thin person made of living crystal. Light moved through his body in beautiful patterns, changing color as he felt different emotions. Right now, those colors were dark and worried. Ambassador Monroe, Nympha said in his musical voice, "I must speak with you about something very serious." Lisa sat down at her desk and pointed to the chair across from her. "Please, sit down. What's wrong? You look upset." Nympha sat down carefully. His crystal body made tiny ringing sounds as he moved. "We have received a message from the Kethvar Empire. It is not good news." Lisa felt her stomach tighten. She had heard of the Kethvar before. They were a species of large, reptile-like creatures who had been taking over planets in this part of the galaxy. They were known for being very aggressive and cruel to other species. "What did they say?" Lisa asked. Nympha's body flashed dark, red, the color of fear and anger mixed together. "They have given us an ultimatum. We must surrender our outer colonies to them within 72 hours, or they will attack and destroy everything." Lisa stood up quickly, her chair rolling backwards. "They what? They can't be serious." "I am afraid they are very serious," Nympha said sadly. "They have already moved a large fleet of warships to the edge of our space. Our sensors show at least 50 battle cruisers, maybe more." Lisa began pacing back and forth in front of the window. Her mind was racing. The Zilani were peaceful people. They had never built warships or weapons meant to hurt others. Their whole society was based on art, science, and peaceful cooperation. They could not fight off an attack like this. "What about your defense forces?" Lisa asked, though she already knew the answer. Nympha's colors became even darker. "We have patrol ships for keeping order and rescue ships for emergencies. Nothing that could stand against Kethvar battle cruisers. Our weapons are designed to disable, not destroy. We have never needed to kill." Lisa stopped pacing and looked directly at her alien friend. "They're counting on that. The Kethvar think you're weak because you're peaceful. They think they can just take what they want without any consequences." "Perhaps they are right," Nympha said quietly. "We cannot fight them. We do not know how." "But you're not alone," Lisa said firmly. "You have allies. You have us." Nympha's body brightened slightly with hope, but then dimmed again. "The Kethvar are very powerful. They have conquered 12 worlds in the past 5 years. Their military is vast and experienced. What can humanity do against such a force?" Lisa sat back down and reached across the desk to gently touch Nympha's crystal hand. It felt smooth and warm, like polished stone that had been sitting in sunlight. "The Kethvar have made a very big mistake," she said. "They think they know humans, but they don't. They think we're soft and weak because we're friends with peaceful species like yours. They're about to learn something very important about humanity." "What is that?" Nympha asked. Lisa's eyes grew hard and her voice became cold as ice. "They're about to learn what happens when someone threatens our friends." She stood up and walked to her communication console. Her fingers moved quickly over the controls, opening a secure channel to Earth's Defense Council. The screen flickered to life, showing the seal of Earth's military command. "This is Ambassador Lisa Monroe calling from Harmony Point Station," she said into the microphone. "Priority Alpha message for Admiral Wells and the Defense Council. The Kethvar Empire has issued an ultimatum to the Zilani Confederation. They have 72 hours to surrender their colonies or face total destruction. The Kethvar fleet is already in position for attack. She paused for a moment, looking back at Nympha, who was watching her with hopeful but frightened eyes. The Zilani are our allies and our friends, Lisa continued. They cannot defend themselves against this threat. I am formally requesting immediate military intervention under the Mutual Defense Treaty signed 15 years ago. The Kethvar Empire seems to have forgotten what humans do when their friends are in danger. I suggest we remind them. Lisa ended the transmission and turned back to Nympha. The alien's body was now glowing with soft blue and green lights, the colors of hope and gratitude. What happens now? Nympha asked. Lisa smiled, but it was not a kind smile. It was the smile of someone who was about to do something very dangerous to very bad people. Now we wait for Earth to respond, she said. And I think the Kethvar Empire is about to discover that threatening humanity's friends is the most dangerous mistake they could possibly make. Far away in space, Captain Jake Sullivan sat in the command chair of the patrol vessel UES Defender. His ship was small compared to the massive battlecruisers of the Kethvar, but it was fast and well armed. Jake had been escorting trade ships through this sector for 2 years now, and he knew these space lanes like the streets of his hometown. His communication officer, Lieutenant Amy Chen, looked up from her console with worry on her face. Captain, we're receiving multiple emergency transmissions from Zilani ships, she said. They're reporting Kethvar vessels moving toward their colonies. It looks like they're preparing for an invasion. Jake felt anger building in his chest. The Zilani were good people, the kind of neighbors anyone would want. They had helped human ships many times when they had problems or needed supplies. They had shared their knowledge freely and asked for nothing in return except friendship. How? Many Kethvar ships? Jake asked. At least 50 major vessels, sir, Amy replied. Maybe more. They're not trying to hide their numbers. Jake stood up and walked to the main display screen. It showed a map of local space with red dots marking the positions of enemy ships. There were a lot of red dots. They think this will be easy, Jake said to his crew. They think they can just roll over the Zilani without anyone stopping them. They think wrong. He turned to his navigation officer. Set course for the nearest human military base. Maximum speed. Sir, that will take us away from the Zilani colonies, the officer said. Jake smiled grimly. We're not running away. We're going to get help. The kind of help that will make the Kethvar very sorry they ever heard of the human race. As the UES Defender jumped into hyperspace, Jake thought about his Zilani friends and the peaceful worlds that were now under threat. The Kethvar had made their choice. Soon, they would face the consequences of that choice, and Jake was very much looking forward to showing them what those consequences would be. Admiral Patricia Wells stood in the command center deep beneath Earth's surface. The massive room buzzed with activity as officers moved between computer stations and communication panels. Giant screens on the walls showed star maps and fleet positions from across human space. Red warning lights flashed, casting an angry glow over everything. Patricia had been expecting this call for weeks. The Kethvar Empire had been pushing their luck, testing how far they could go before someone pushed back. Now they had crossed the line by threatening the Zilani. That was a mistake they would regret for the rest of their very short future. Admiral, we have confirmation from Ambassador Monroe, said Colonel David Brown, her chief of staff. The Kethvar ultimatum is real. 50-plus battlecruisers are already in position near Zilani space. Patricia nodded grimly. She had read the intelligence reports about the Kethvar. They were bullies who picked on weaker species, taking their resources and enslaving their populations. They had gotten away with it because most peaceful species had no way to fight back. But the Zilani were different. The Zilani had friends. Send the activation codes to all fleet commanders, Patricia ordered. Operation Guardian Angel is now active. I want every available ship ready for deployment within 6 hours. All ships, Admiral? David asked. That's 3 full battle fleets. Patricia's eyes were cold as winter steel. The Kethvar want to play with fire. Let's show them what fire really looks like. Across human space, secret military bases came to life. Ships that had been hidden in asteroid fields and behind moons began powering up their engines. The pride of humanity's fleet started moving toward assembly points, their crews eager for the fight ahead. Lieutenant Commander Ryan Hayes watched from the bridge of the battleship UES Retribution as other ships appeared around them. First came the destroyers, sleek and fast like hunting wolves. Then the cruisers arrived, their hulls bristling with weapons. Finally, the dreadnoughts emerged from hyperspace, massive ships that could crack planets if needed. "I've never seen so many ships." "In one place," said his second officer, Lieutenant Kate Morgan. "How many are there?" Ryan checked his tactical display. Over 200 major vessels and more arriving every hour, plus support ships, transports, and the stealth frigates. Kate looked confused. "Stealth frigates? I've never heard of those." Ryan smiled. "That's because they're classified. The aliens don't know we have them. They're about to find out." On the other side of the galaxy, Dr. Alex Carter walked through the crystal gardens of Zetha Prime, the Zilani homeworld. The beautiful structures around him caught and reflected light in amazing patterns, creating rainbows that danced through the air. But today, the usual peace of this place was broken by fear. Young Zilani children clung to their parents, their bodies flashing with confused colors. They could sense the worry of the adults around them, even if they didn't understand why everyone was scared. The Zilani had never experienced war before. They didn't know what it meant to be threatened with destruction. Dr. Carter called Elder Sindal as she approached through the garden. Her crystal body was dim with worry. "Have you heard from your people? Will they help us?" Alex stopped walking and faced the elegant alien. He had been working with the Zilani for 3 years, studying their unique biology and learning from their advanced science. They had become more than research subjects to him. They were friends. "My people don't abandon their friends," Alex said, firmly. "If the Kethvar want to threaten you, they'll have to go through us first." "But they are so many," Sindal said, her voice like wind chimes in a gentle breeze, "and they are experienced in war. We have heard stories of the worlds they have conquered. They show no mercy." Alex reached out and gently touched her arm. "Elder Sindal, the Kethvar have made one very big mistake. They think they know humans, but they don't. They're about to learn something that will surprise them very much." "What is that?" "They're about to learn that humans are much more dangerous than we look." Back in space, Captain Jake Sullivan's patrol ship had reached the human military base at Titan Station. What he saw there made him whistle in amazement. The station was surrounded by warships of every size and type. Massive carriers launched fighter squadrons while supply ships moved between the larger vessels like busy ants. Jake docked his small ship and hurried to the command briefing room. Inside, he found dozens of other ship captains, all getting their orders for the mission ahead. At the front of the room stood Admiral Wells herself, having traveled from Earth to personally oversee the operation. "Ladies and gentlemen," the Admiral began, "the Kethvar Empire has made a very poor choice. They have threatened our allies, believing that we won't or can't defend them. They are wrong on both counts." She pressed a button, and the wall screen showed a map of Kethvar space. Red lines marked their fleet positions and invasion routes. The Kethvar have been bullying peaceful species for years. They've gotten away with it because no one was strong enough to stop them. That ends today. Captain Susan Lee, commander of the heavy cruiser UES Thunder, raised her hand. "Admiral, what are our rules of engagement?" Patricia's smile was not pleasant. "The Kethvar want to play by their rules, so we'll play by their rules. No mercy, no prisoners unless they surrender completely. No warnings beyond the one we're about to give them." She turned back to the map. "They have 72 hours to withdraw their ultimatum and apologize to the Zilani. If they don't, we will remind them why threatening humanity's friends is a very bad idea." The room fell silent. Every captain present understood what this meant. This wouldn't be a small military action or a police operation. This would be total war. Back in Kethvar space, War Commander Thesak stood on the bridge of his flagship, looking at reports from his scouts. The reptilian warrior was 7 feet tall, covered in thick scales, and armed with natural claws that could tear through metal. His species had evolved as predators, and they had never met anyone they couldn't beat in a fight. "Commander," said his intelligence officer, "we're detecting human ships moving toward our position. Maybe 20 or 30 vessels." Thesac's mouth opened in what passed for laughter among his people, showing rows of sharp teeth. 20 ships, 30? The humans send toys to fight a real military force. He activated the communication system and broadcast on all frequencies, making sure both the humans and Zilani could hear his message. "Attention, human vessels. This is War Commander Thesak of the Kethvar Empire. You have entered a war zone where you do not belong. Your Zilani friends are weak and will be conquered. Your little ships cannot stop the might of the Kethvar fleet. Turn around and go home before you get hurt." The response came exactly 24 hours later. Admiral Wells's voice was calm and cold as she spoke across the vast distances of space. "War Commander Thesak, this is Admiral Patricia Wells of the Human Defense Fleet. You have threatened our allies and ignored our warnings. You now have 24 hours to withdraw your forces and issue a formal apology to the Zilani Confederation. This is your final warning." Thesak laughed again. "Final warning? From humans? We have conquered 12 worlds, little Admiral. Your friendship means nothing when worlds burn. We will crush your allies, and then we will come for you." The communication channel went silent. In the quiet of his command bridge, Thesak felt confident and strong. The humans were clearly afraid to fight a real battle. Their ships would probably run away as soon as the shooting started. He had no idea that humanity's largest fleet in history was already moving toward him through hyperspace. He had no idea that human weapons technology had advanced far beyond what alien intelligence services believed possible. Most importantly, he had no idea what humans were truly capable of when someone threatened their friends. War Commander Thesak was about to receive the most educational experience of his life. Unfortunately for him, it would also be the last educational experience of his life. The countdown had begun. The attack came without warning, just as War Commander Thesak had promised. 3 Zilani research stations disappeared in brilliant flashes of light as Kethvar plasma cannons tore them apart. 2 mining colonies on the outer rim followed minutes. Later, their crystal cities reduced to glowing dust that scattered into space. Captain Jenny Walsh watched the destruction from her reconnaissance ship, the UES Shadow. Her vessel was built for stealth and speed, designed to spy on enemies without being detected. Right now, she wished she could do more than just watch as innocent people died. "Captain, I'm picking up escape pods from the research stations," reported her sensor officer, Lieutenant Mark Davis. "Looks like some of the Zilani made it out alive." Jenny felt a cold rage building in her chest. "How many?" "Maybe 100. Survivors out of 3,000 people," Mark said quietly. "The Kethvar didn't give them any time to evacuate." Jenny activated her long-range transmitter and opened a channel to the human fleet. "Admiral Wells, this is Shadow 1. The Kethvar have begun their attack. 3 research stations and 2 colonies destroyed. Minimal survivors. They're not taking prisoners." Admiral Wells's voice came back immediately, filled with controlled fury. "Understood, Shadow 1. Transmit all footage to the fleet. Every ship needs to see what we're dealing with." The images spread through the human fleet within minutes. Hundreds of ships received the recordings of crystal cities being vaporized, of research stations full of peaceful scientists being blown apart, of families trying to escape in small pods only to be hunted down by Kethvar fighters. Lieutenant Commander Ryan Hayes stood on the bridge of the UES Retribution and watched the footage on the main screen. Around him, his crew was silent. These weren't enemy soldiers being killed. These were civilians, scientists, artists, and children who had never hurt anyone in their lives. "Sir," said his weapons officer, Lieutenant Sam Turner, "request permission to arm all weapon systems and prepare for maximum firepower." Ryan looked around at his crew. Every face showed the same expression of cold anger. The Kethvar had just made the biggest mistake in their species' history. "Permission granted," Ryan said. "Load everything we have. When we go in, I want these ships ready to deliver hell itself." Across the human fleet, the same scene was playing out on every bridge. Ships that had been moving in standard formation suddenly began changing positions, spreading out into attack patterns that few alien species had ever seen. Weapon systems that had been hidden or disguised suddenly emerged from their housings. Ships that had looked like ordinary cruisers revealed themselves to be floating fortresses. Admiral Wells stood in the command center of her flagship, the massive dreadnought UES Vengeance. Around her, dozens of officers worked at control stations, coordinating the movements of over 200 warships. The largest human fleet ever assembled was about to show the galaxy what happened when someone hurt humanity's friends. "Admiral, all ships report ready for combat," said Captain Robert Hill, her fleet coordinator. "Weapons charged, shields up, fighters launched." Patricia looked at the tactical display showing both fleets. The Kethvar ships were spread out in a defensive line, confident in their superior numbers and firepower. They had no idea what was coming for them. "Open a channel to the entire fleet," she ordered. When the communication system activated, her voice reached every human ship in the battle group. "Ladies and gentlemen, the Kethvar Empire has shown us who they really are. They kill innocent people without warning. They destroy peaceful worlds for profit. They think that strength means being cruel to those weaker than yourself." She paused, looking at the images of destroyed Zilani colonies still displayed on her screens. They are about to learn what real strength looks like. They wanted a war. Let's give them one they'll never forget. "All ships, attack formation Alpha. Show them why threatening our friends was the last mistake they'll ever make." The human fleet moved forward like a wave of destruction. Ships that had seemed slow and peaceful suddenly revealed incredible speed and maneuverability. Weapons that the Kethvar had never seen before began charging up, their energy readings off the scale. War Commander Thesak watched the approaching human ships from his flagship's bridge. He was still confident, still sure of his victory. His fleet outnumbered the humans 2-1. His ships were larger and more heavily armed. This would be an easy fight. "All ships prepare to fire," he ordered. "We'll destroy half of them with the first volley. The rest will run home crying to their mothers." The Kethvar fleet opened fire first, sending thousands of plasma bolts and missile warheads toward the human ships. It was an impressive display of firepower that should have overwhelmed any enemy. But something impossible happened. The human ships didn't just dodge the incoming fire, they seemed to dance through it. Point defense systems that were faster and more accurate than anything the Kethvar had ever seen shot down missiles before they could hit their targets. Energy shields absorbed plasma blasts that should have cut through ship hulls like knives through paper. "What?" Thesak stared at his tactical display in confusion. "How are they doing that?" His answer came in the form of the human counterattack. The human fleet didn't just return fire, it unleashed weapons that the Kethvar had never imagined. Plasma cannons that could melt through 3 feet of armor fired in perfect coordination. Kinetic weapons launched metal rods at incredible speeds, punching through enemy shields like they weren't even there. But the most terrifying thing was the stealth ships. Vessels that hadn't appeared on any scanner suddenly materialized right next to Kethvar cruisers, firing at point-blank range before disappearing again. The reptilian warriors had no defense against enemies they couldn't see coming. Within the first hour of battle, 12 Kethvar ships had been destroyed, and 20 more were badly damaged. The human fleet had lost exactly 0 vessels. Impossible, Thesak roared as he watched another of his cruisers explode. "These are just humans, they should not be able to fight like this." His communications officer looked up from his station with fear in his reptilian eyes. "Commander, we're receiving surrender requests from 17 of our ships. They want to withdraw from battle." "No one withdraws," Thesak snarled. "We are Kethvar. We do not run from mammals." But his ships were running anyway. Captains who had seemed brave and fierce when attacking defenseless civilians suddenly found they had no stomach for fighting an enemy that could fight back. Kethvar vessels began breaking formation, trying to escape to hyperspace. The humans didn't let them go. Fast destroyers chased down fleeing ships, while long-range weapons picked off stragglers. Captain Jenny Walsh and her stealth ship followed a group of Kethvar fighters that were trying to hunt down Zilani escape pods, and systematically destroyed every one of them. "This is Shadow 1 to all Zilani survivors," she broadcast. "Human rescue ships are on the way. You're safe now. The bad guys are running away. Lieutenant Commander Ryan Hayes led his battleship into the heart of the enemy formation, his massive guns firing continuously. Around him, other human ships moved with perfect coordination, like they were all part of one giant machine designed to destroy their enemies. "Target that flagship," Ryan ordered, pointing at Thessak's massive command ship. "Let's introduce their war commander to human hospitality." The UES Retribution fired all weapons at once. The combined firepower was enough to level a small city. It struck Thessak's ship directly, overloading its shields and tearing huge holes in its armor. On the HFY flagship, alarms screamed as systems failed throughout the ship. Thessak was thrown to the floor as another human barrage struck his vessel. When he stood up, half his bridge crew was dead and the other half was trying to put out fires. "Damage report," he shouted. "Engines failing, weapons offline, life support at 30%, his surviving officer reported. "Sir, we need to abandon ship." Thessak looked at his tactical display and saw the truth he had been trying to deny. His mighty fleet was being destroyed. Ships that had conquered 12 worlds were being torn apart by human weapons. Warriors who had never known defeat were begging to surrender. "How?" he whispered. "How are humans this strong?" The answer came from Admiral Wells herself, her voice broadcasting on all frequencies so every surviving HFY could hear. "War Commander Thessak, you asked how we could be this strong. The answer is simple. We're strong because we protect the things we care about. You're weak because you only know how to hurt others. That's the difference between us." As if to prove her point, 3 more HFY ships exploded under human fire. The great HFY fleet, which had seemed so powerful just hours before, was now a collection of burning wrecks and fleeing survivors. The battle wasn't over yet, but everyone knew how it would end. The HFY had challenged humanity's allies, and now they were paying the price for that mistake. The human fleet didn't stop at the border. While War Commander Thessak's broken ships limped away from the battlefield, Admiral Wells made a decision that would change galactic history forever. Instead of declaring victory and going home, she ordered her fleet to follow the fleeing HFY ships back to their own territory. "Admiral, are you sure about this?" asked Captain Robert Hill, her fleet coordinator. "We've already won the battle. The Zilani are safe." Patricia looked at the tactical display showing the wreckage of destroyed HFY ships floating in space. Each piece of debris represented the death of someone who had chosen to attack innocent people. Her decision was already made. "The HFY Empire has been terrorizing peaceful species for decades," she said coldly. "Today they killed thousands of Zilani civilians without warning. If we let them retreat and rebuild, they'll just do it again to someone else. That ends now." The human fleet jumped into hyperspace, following the energy trails left by the escaping HFY vessels. What happened next broke every rule of galactic warfare that had existed for centuries. Instead of accepting their victory and negotiating a peace treaty, the humans were taking the war directly to the enemy's home. Colonel Nina Brooke stood in the deployment bay of the troop transport UES Liberty, surrounded by 200 human Marines. Each soldier wore advanced combat armor and carried weapons that could punch through tank armor. They had trained for years for missions like this, but none of them had ever expected to be landing on an alien homeworld. "Listen up, Marines," Nina called out as the ship shook around them. "We're about to make history. We're the first human ground forces to set foot on a HFY world. These are the same species that just murdered thousands of innocent Zilani families. Remember that when you see them trying to surrender." The Marines checked their weapons and equipment one final time. Through the transport's windows, they could see the HFY planet growing larger below them. Cities covered in dark metal structures, spread across the surface like scars on the world's skin. "Colonel," said Sergeant Tony Martinez, her second in command, "what are our orders if civilians get in the way?" Nina's expression was hard as stone. "We're not here to hurt innocent people, even if they're HFY. But anyone carrying a weapon, anyone in military uniform, anyone who tries to stop us from completing our mission is fair game. These people chose war. Now they get to see what war really looks like." On the planet's surface, HFY military commanders scrambled to organize their defenses. They had never faced an invasion of their own worlds before, For centuries, they had been the ones doing the invading. Now they were about to learn what it felt like to be on the receiving end. General Vextar, the Kethvar defense commander, stood in his command bunker watching reports flood in from across the planet. Human ships were landing troops in a dozen different locations, each strike team moving with precision and speed that his forces couldn't match. "Sir, we're getting reports from the capital city," said his aide, a young Kethvar officer whose scales were pale with fear. "Human Marines have taken the spaceport and are advancing on the government district. Our troops are falling back." Vextar slammed his clawed fist on the table. "How many humans?" 1,000. 2,000. 50, sir. 50 human Marines are pushing back 3,000 of our best soldiers." The general stared at his aide in disbelief. That couldn't be right. No species was that good at fighting. But the reports kept coming in, all saying the same thing. Small groups of human soldiers were defeating much larger Kethvar forces with ease. Dr. Alex Carter sat in his laboratory on Zetha Prime, monitoring the human military communications. As a civilian scientist, he wasn't supposed to have access to military channels, but the Zelani had given him special permission. They wanted to understand what their human friends were doing. What he heard amazed and terrified him in equal measure. The gentle, peaceful humans he worked with every day had become something else entirely. They were waging war with a creativity and ruthlessness that he had never imagined possible. "Dr. Carter," said Elder Sindal as she entered his lab, "we are receiving reports from the Kethvar worlds. Is it true that your people are actually invading their planets?" Alex looked up from his computer screens. "It's true. Admiral Wells isn't just defending us. She's making sure the Kethvar Empire can never threaten anyone ever again." Sindal's crystal body flashed with confused colors. "But that seems so extreme. The immediate threat to us is over. Why continue fighting?" Alex thought carefully before answering. "Because humans don't just defend their friends. We make sure that anyone who hurts our friends can never do it again. The Kethvar Empire has been terrorizing peaceful species for decades. My people have decided that has to stop." Meanwhile, on another Kethvar world, Captain Jake Sullivan led a strike team into the planet's main military academy. The facility had trained thousands of Kethvar officers over the centuries, teaching them how to conquer and control other species. Today, it would learn a different lesson. The human soldiers moved through the academy's corridors like ghosts. Their advanced equipment allowed them to see through walls and detect enemies before they could be detected in return. What should have been a fortress became a trap for its own defenders. "Surrender now and you will not be harmed," Jake announced over the Academy's communication system. "Continue fighting and face the consequences." In the Academy's main hall, 200 Kethvar cadets huddled together with their instructors. These were supposed to be the future leaders of the Kethvar military, trained from childhood to be fierce warriors. Now they cowered in fear as human footsteps echoed through their sacred halls. Instructor Kolthak, a veteran of 12 planetary conquests, tried to rally his students. "They are only humans. We are Kethvar. We do not fear mammals." But his words rang hollow. Everyone in that room had heard the reports from the fleet battle. Everyone knew that the mighty Kethvar war machine was being systematically destroyed by these only humans. When Captain Sullivan and his team entered the hall, the effect was immediate. The sight of human soldiers in full combat gear, moving, with perfect coordination and carrying weapons that hummed with deadly energy, was enough to break the last of the Kethvar resistance. "We surrender," Instructor Kolthak said quietly, his voice barely a whisper. "Please. We surrender." Jake looked at the frightened alien warriors and felt no satisfaction in their defeat. This wasn't about revenge or conquest. This was about making sure they never hurt innocent people again. "Smart choice," Jake said. "Your fighting days are over." Similar scenes were playing out across the Kethvar Empire. On world after world, the species that had seemed so fierce and unstoppable was laying down their weapons and begging for mercy. Their military bases were captured, their fleets destroyed, their government officials fleeing to hiding places that human technology found within hours. But the most significant change wasn't happening on the battlefield. Throughout Kethvar space, other species that had been conquered and enslaved were rising up in rebellion. News of the Kethvar defeats had spread quickly, and oppressed peoples were seizing their chance for freedom. The Nixtal, a species of peaceful farmers who had been enslaved for 30 years, stormed their prison camps and declared independence. The Mordek mining colonies threw off their chains and ejected their Kethvar overseers. Everywhere the reptilian empire had expanded, their former victims were fighting back, and the humans made sure those rebellions succeeded. Human ships appeared in system after system, not to conquer, but to protect newly freed peoples from Kethvar. Retaliation. Admiral Wells had realized that destroying the Kethvar military wasn't enough. The Empire's entire structure of oppression had to be dismantled. War Commander Thesak, now stripped of his rank and hiding in a bunker on the Kethvar homeworld, sent message after desperate message to the human fleet. He offered surrender, reparations, anything to make the destruction stop. But his messages went unanswered. Admiral Wells had made her position clear to her own officers. The Kethvar Empire would cease to exist as a threat to anyone. There would be no negotiation, no partial surrender, no treaty that would allow them to rebuild and try again in a few years. The galaxy's greatest bullies were learning what happened when they picked on the wrong species. And the lesson was being delivered with a thoroughness that would be remembered for generations to come. The Kethvar Empire had made their choice when they attacked the Zilani. Now they would live with the consequences of that choice, for whatever remained of their existence as a civilization. 3 weeks after the first Kethvar attack on the Zilani colonies, the war was over. What had once been one of the galaxy's most feared military empires was now a collection of refugee camps and humanitarian zones managed by human peacekeeping forces. The speed and completeness of the Kethvar defeat shocked every species in the known galaxy. Ambassador Lisa Monroe stood before the Galactic Council in the Great Assembly Hall on Nexus Station. Representatives from 47 different species sat in curved rows, their various forms creating a rainbow of alien life. Some floated in special atmosphere tanks, others perched on crystalline platforms, and a few hung from the ceiling in anti-gravity fields. All of them were staring at her with a mixture of respect and fear. The human response to the Kethvar aggression is now complete, Lisa said, her voice carrying clearly through the vast chamber. The Kethvar Empire no longer exists as a military threat to any peaceful species. Their weapons of mass destruction have been destroyed, their fleets disbanded, and their government dissolved. A murmur ran through the assembled delegates. The Threxney representative, a slug-like creature with multiple eyes, raised one of his appendages to speak. Ambassador Monroe, the speed of your military action has surprised many of us. The Kethvar Empire controlled over 30 star systems. How did humanity defeat them so quickly? Lisa looked directly at the alien delegate. We had good motivation. They threatened our friends. Humans take that very seriously. In the audience, Elder Nympha of the Zilani sat with other members of his species council. His crystal body glowed with soft blue and gold lights, the colors of gratitude and deep emotion. When Lisa looked in his direction, he stood up gracefully. If I may speak, Nympha said, his musical voice filling the chamber. The Zilani people wish to thank humanity for their protection, but we also wish to say something else. We have learned that friendship with humans is not just an alliance of convenience. It is a bond that goes beyond politics and treaties. Those who would harm the friends of humanity should remember what happened to the Kethvar Empire and choose wisdom instead of aggression. The chamber fell silent. Everyone present understood the message. Humanity had just demonstrated that threatening their allies brought swift and total destruction. It was a lesson that would not be forgotten. On the former Kethvar homeworld, Captain Jake Sullivan walked through what had once been the Empire's capital city. The dark metal buildings still stood, but human engineers were already working to convert military facilities into hospitals and schools. The change was remarkable to see. Jake stopped at a small park where HFY children played under the watchful eyes of human peacekeepers. The young reptiles seemed happy enough, laughing as they chased each other around the playground equipment. It was hard to believe these innocent kids belonged to the same species that had terrorized the galaxy for decades. "Strange, isn't it?" said Colonel Nina Brooks as she joined him. "A few weeks ago we were fighting their parents, now we're making sure their kids have enough to eat." Jake nodded. "That's the difference between us and them. They conquered to destroy and control. We fought to protect and free." Not far away, the former war commander Thesak sat in a small room in the human detention facility. The once proud military leader looked much smaller now, his scales dull and his eyes filled with defeat. Across from him sat Dr. Alex Carter, who had volunteered to help with the interrogation process. "I still don't understand," Thesak said quietly. How did you prepare for war against us when we had never fought before?" Alex leaned back in his chair. "We didn't prepare to fight you specifically. We prepared to protect our friends from anyone who might threaten them. The HFY Empire just happened to be the first to make that mistake. But your weapons, your tactics, your coordination, it was like you had been planning this for years." "In a way we had been," Alex explained. "Humans have been fighting wars for thousands of years. We've learned that the best way to protect the people you care about is to be so strong that no one wants to fight you in the first place. The HFY Empire didn't get that message." Thesak looked down at his clawed hands. "We thought humans were weak because you were friends with peaceful species like the Zilani. We thought strength meant being willing to hurt others. And now you know better," Alex said simply. "On Zetha Prime, the Zilani homeworld, the crystal cities were more beautiful than ever. The attack on the outer colonies had shocked the peaceful species, but it had also brought them closer together. In the rebuilt memorial gardens, new crystal structures caught and reflected light in patterns that honored both the victims of the HFY attack and the human friends who had avenged them. Dr. Alex Carter had returned to his research, but his work now included helping other species understand human nature. Many aliens were still confused about how such a seemingly peaceful species could become so deadly when provoked. "The key to understanding humans," he explained to a group of visiting alien scientists, "is realizing that we're not naturally peaceful or naturally aggressive. We're protective. When our friends are safe, we're the most cooperative species you'll ever meet. When our friends are threatened, we become something very different." Elder Sindal, who was part of the visiting group, asked the question that many species wanted answered. "Will humans use this military power to conquer others as the HFY did?" Alex smiled. "That's not how we work. Humans don't want to rule other species. We want to be friends with them. But being our friend comes with a guarantee that we'll protect you from anyone who tries to hurt you." Across the galaxy, the effects of the HFY War were still being felt. Species that had been oppressed for decades were now free to rebuild their civilizations. Trade routes that had been controlled by HFY pirates were now safe for peaceful commerce. Worlds that had lived in fear were now sending delegates to establish diplomatic relations with humanity. Captain Jenny Walsh, now promoted to admiral, for her role in the war, sat in her new office reviewing requests for human protection. Dozens of species wanted to establish formal alliance treaties with humanity, having seen what happened to those who threatened human friends. "Admiral," said her aide, Lieutenant Mark Davis, "we've received another request for alliance negotiations. The Polni Collective wants to discuss mutual defense agreements." Jenny looked at the request and smiled. "Schedule a meeting. It looks like humanity is about to make a lot of new friends. But the most important changes were happening in the hearts and minds of the galaxy's inhabitants. For centuries, aggressive species had bullied peaceful ones because they could. Strength had been measured by willingness to hurt others. The HFY War had changed that equation forever. Now every potential aggressor had to ask themselves a crucial question. Were their intended victims friends with humanity? And if the answer was yes, was whatever they hoped to gain worth facing the full military might of the human species? For most aggressive species, the answer was clearly no. The galaxy became a more peaceful place, not because warfare had been eliminated, but because the cost of starting wars had become too high for most to consider. Ambassador Lisa Monroe returned to Harmony Point Station, where her journey had begun weeks earlier. The diplomatic facility was busier than ever, with new species arriving daily to establish relations with both humanity and the Zilani. The small station had become one of the most important diplomatic centers in the galaxy. As she looked out at the stars through her office window, Lisa thought about how much had changed. The Kethvar Empire was gone. Dozens of oppressed species were free, and humanity had revealed itself as the galaxy's new protector of the innocent. But most importantly, the galaxy had learned a lesson that would echo through history. Threatening humanity's friends was the most dangerous mistake any species could make. It was a mistake that the Kethvar Empire had paid for with their entire civilization. And it was a mistake that no one would ever make again. The stars twinkled peacefully in the darkness, watched over by human ships that moved silently through the void, ready to protect any who needed protection and befriend any who sought friendship. The galaxy had found its guardians, and they wore the faces of humanity,